Boise, Idaho is an amazing place to live from a personal perspective. There's a reason that a lot of people are moving to the Boise, Idaho area. No, Boise's not just about potatoes and farms and hunting, but there is a lot of pros that do come with living in the Boise area. There is also a lot of cons that come with living in the Boise area that you need to know about before moving to the Boise, Idaho area. I'm going to run through the pros and cons of living in Boise, Idaho, and things that you need to know before moving to the Boise, Idaho area. My name is Brady Fagel. I am a local realtor in the Boise, Idaho area. I've lived here my entire life, and I'd love to help you relocate to the Boise, Idaho area. Feel free to text or call me any time of day. I'd love to sit down, get to know you, get to know your family, see why you're moving to the Boise area, and see what would fit you best when moving to Boise and finding a home in this area. Now with that, let's jump right into it and we'll start getting into the pros and cons of Boise, Idaho. Now the first thing about Boise is the cost of living. Now the general cost of living, it is a pro in my opinion. So across the board, Boise is generally more affordable than anywhere you're going to be moving from. Most people moving to the Boise, Idaho area are going to be coming from that California, Oregon, Washington, a lot more of the metro areas, and Boise is just going to be more affordable. Groceries across the board are usually a lot more affordable in the Boise area. Those utility bills are some of the cheapest in the country. On average, you're going to be looking at about $300 to $350 maybe, depending on the size of your house, for a utility bill. That's including pretty much everything. And when it comes to gas and electric, in the summer, they're opposite that they are in the winter. So even though your electric may go up and then it may go down, your gas goes up with it. So it just flip-flops throughout the year depending on the type of season. When it comes to the cost of transportation in Boise, there's not a bunch of public transportation, but the gas prices in Boise are higher than the national average. Again, if you are moving from some of those cities like California, Portland, Seattle, it is going to be a lot lower here. A little bit of a tip there is that Walmart and Costco in the Boise area are going to be some of your cheapest gas prices. There are also some advantages. I know of some apps that I use. One's called Upside that gives you a little bit of a discount. The other thing is Fred Meyer, which is a grocery store in Boise. If you're a part of their loyalty program, you earn fuel points, and there's times where you'll earn enough points and you get $1 off each gallon up to, I think, 30 gallons. So a few tidbits there for the gas prices and cost of living in Boise. And those are big pros when moving to the Boise area, is being able to afford living and not be stressing as much about money. When it comes to real estate in Boise, I'm not going to dive into too much detail there because I have other videos that go into a little bit more detail on that. But as a whole, it can be a pro or a con depending on where you're coming from. Boise is a little bit less affordable than the national average, but again, where most people are moving from in that California, Seattle, Portland, Dallas, those areas, Boise is going to be more affordable to live here. So that is definitely a pro, but there is some cons if you are moving from other areas, or there is just some cons with the real estate market and some of the builds and some of the styles of homes and what you do get in the Boise, Idaho area. The other thing with cost of living that a lot of people come to the Idaho area is taxes. So there is a state tax in Idaho, unlike Wyoming or Florida or Tennessee, but it is low. It's 5.8%, which is a lot better than a lot of the other states. There is a sales tax in Idaho, which some people aren't used to. If you're moving from Oregon, there's a 6% sales tax in Boise. Overall, there is less of a tax burden in the Boise, Idaho market. And as a whole, it is on the lower thirds of the least tax burden in the entire country. So that's also a big pro of moving to the Boise area for most people. It can be a con if you are moving from a state where there is no state tax. As a whole, cost of living in the Boise, Idaho area, when you combine that low cost of utilities, the low grocery costs, and the lower tax rates than most other states, the cost of living as a whole is a big pro of moving to the Boise, Idaho area. The second thing I pulled about Boise is the culture in Boise. In Boise, the culture, living here my entire life, it's an amazing culture as far as it comes to the people. So the culture here, I would say, is that small town, kind, friendly, welcoming, family friendly, has grown with Boise as it's grown in population. That small town country feel has kind of stayed in the culture in Boise. So it's a great place to raise a family. There's tons of parks, tons of kids events, tons of things to meet other families and other people your age, and you're always going to be met with that kindness and grace and friendliness that Meridian, Boise, and the Treasure Valley, I do think, bring. Now, of course, there are the outliers where you can have those outside things, but as a whole, the culture in Boise does have a very family friendly, welcoming vibe. And I've really loved that living here my entire life. The other thing about culture in Boise is there really is a big culture of art and music. We have art in the park. In the summers, there's constantly concerts throughout the summer. Every evening, every weekend, you can usually find something to do that revolves around art and music. And aside from the art and the music, we also have just big events. There's sports culture here with BSU and their college football team every weekend in the fall. A lot of people love to do that. We also have a minor league hockey team, which they play downtown Boise, so in the winter, that's something that's really fun to do. There's always events going on. Those event centers that I named in the Boise, Idaho area, there is a lot of things going on. And so the culture in Boise, as far as it comes to arts, music, and just major events like music and sports, it really is just a great culture and a great place to live. Now, the third thing is the weather in Boise. Depending on which side of the weather and where you're moving from, this is a pro or a con, but I'd say the biggest thing about Boise is there is all 4 seasons, and so be aware of that, be ready for that. The biggest 2 cons I'd say people have with the Boise weather is the summer and the winter. In the summer, we can get long, dry summers, and in July and August, we can get weeks, days of 100-degree plus weather with that dry climate. And you combine that all with a heavy smoke, or if we have a bad fire season, the skies can be dark, it can be gloomy out. So that's a big con that a lot of people say when they move to the Boise area, is that the summers are hot, dry, long, and smoky. So that's something to watch out for before moving here, is those summer months and that heat. The opposite side of this is the winters in Boise. So it can be cold, long, the days can be short, it can be getting dark at 4:30, 5 p.m. for long periods of times. Then we get what are called inversions that roll through the Boise area, where it can be cloudy for days or weeks at a time and trap in a lot of that air, having low air quality in the winter. The other thing is that some people just can't deal with the cold and the snow. Even though the winters in Boise are a lot more mild than places like the north, the Midwest, like Minnesota, Chicago, there's still a lot more. If you're moving from a place like California, Seattle, or Portland, it's definitely a lot harder for a lot of people that move from those areas. Quick tip on the weather and how it is in Boise is, with winter, sometimes people think that you have to get a 4-wheel drive vehicle when moving to the Boise, Idaho area. Now, if you can't afford that and that's not an issue for you, of course it is great to have that as a little bit of a safety net if you're not used to driving in on the icy roads and in those cold weather. But I definitely don't think it's a necessity. There is very few days out of the year in comparison that there is snow and where it is dangerous to drive, and oftentimes there are ways around that. So don't go buying a car right away when you get here that's a 4-wheel drive vehicle that puts you at risk of losing out on a house because of your lending criteria. So just a little bit tidbit there, that 4-wheel drive vehicles in the Boise area are not necessarily a necessity. And that the winters here, yes, they are hard for some people, but as a whole, they're really not that hard. There's very few days out of the year that it usually snows. We do have some years where we had Snowmageddon, where it snowed 3 feet and there was snow everywhere. But on the most part, the average winters here are not that severe to where you have to have a 4-wheel drive vehicle. With that, I do suggest, if you are moving to the area, trying to visit during the winter and during the summer before moving here, so that you know what you're getting yourself into and you're not surprised and making something up in your head that it's actually not in Boise. So moving here is a big part of taking care of some of those cons, like the winter and the summer in the Boise area. Now, the pros of winter and summer can come in Boise. So if you do like to ski, if you do like to tube, if you do like to go snowshoeing, Boise has a lot of opportunities for those things in and around the Boise area. In the summer, there's lots of opportunities to go boating, the river, the water park in Boise. So there can be some pros with those, but I'd say those are the 2 biggest cons when it comes to the weather. Another big pro with the weather in Boise that I think is the 4 seasons, but specifically the spring and the fall. So in the spring, it's a little bit more rainy, but we do have long periods of time through May and June, especially, where we get like 75 to 80 degree weather for weeks at a time, and it's just beautiful out. You can go outside, you can hang out, you get to eat outside, have drinks with friends, and you really don't have to worry about being too hot or too cold. In the fall, it's the same way. We'll get months of 75, 80 degree weather, and it's just amazing how you get the fall leaves, you get to eat outside, you get to go to the parks. and those are big pros of the Boise area in my opinion. The next thing on the list for the Boise Idaho area is the outdoors. So this is a big pro for most people. I wouldn't say this is a con for anybody, but there may be people who are just not into the outdoors, so it's just a neutral thing. But a pro of living in Boise is definitely the outdoors. There's lots of fishing opportunity, whether that's in the Boise River, that's the reservoirs up north like Lucky Peak, or even Lake Lowell and Nampa and Caldwell. There's fishing opportunity there. There's floating the Boise River. There's all of the parks and the greenbelt, and even those more micro outdoor things that you can do within the city itself. There's a lot of opportunity there, a lot of pros to living in Boise. The other thing that's super popular is a lot of the hiking trails, whether that's you hiking up to Table Rock or hiking through the woods or hiking the greenbelt even, and then mountain biking. Mountain biking is a really popular thing in the Boise area, and a lot of people take advantage of that in the foothills of Boise. The other thing is if you're an outdoorsman like me and you love hunting, you love fishing, there is a lot of opportunity in the Boise area as far as it comes to hunting. And as Boise has grown, it has gotten more and more busy in the woods, but the outdoors hunting within Boise and even just within that 3 to 4 hour radius, there is a lot of opportunity there. So if you do like to fish or you like to go to lakes, Lake Lowell is a popular destination for these things. If you go to Caldwell, Nampa, that's where Lake Lowell is. There's a beach there, there's places to hang out, there's boating, there's places to hike there as well. There's a lot of nature reserves around Lake Lowell, so you can get out and hike in those nature reserves. There's bass fishing. They just introduced tiger muskie, so if you're a fisherman, that is some opportunity there. I know in the winter as well, people like to duck and goose hunt in Lake Lowell, so there's a lot of opportunity even within it other than just the Boise River, and those are just some good things to know about if the outdoors is something that is your thing. With those outdoors, if you are a mountain biker, there is the Bike Park, which is in Eagle, and then a lot of the foothills that people are going to be mountain biking in are just north of Boise in the foothill areas. There's a lot of opportunity there. If you go and you look up trails for mountain biking in Boise, you're going to find those. If you do like the outdoors, whether it's hunting, fishing, or if it's just hiking and being outside in the trees, Boise, that's a big pro of living in the Boise area. The next thing on the list for Boise is the politics. So again, it's another thing that's a pro or a con depending on who you are. I can just give a rough overview of what I've seen and what I know to be true in the Boise area, and that is that as a whole, Boise and the Treasure Valley is just going to be conservative. So Idaho is a conservative state, and those values ring true in the Boise, Idaho area. Now, Boise, the city itself, I can tell you, has gotten a little bit more on the liberal side. So if you are somebody who wants that, that's something to know, is that Boise City itself is going more liberal. The cities that are more on the conservative side are going to be Star, Middleton, Kuna, Nampa, Caldwell. So those are going to be more conservative than the other cities. Meridian, Eagle, and Boise, those are going to be more on the liberal side when it comes to politics in Boise. The other thing with politics comes gun laws. In Boise, you are going to see people who love their guns. That's a reason to move to Boise for a lot of people, because they want that amendment protected. You're going to see people who are going to be walking around with open carry, and it is just something to be aware of before moving to the Boise area. Now, whether either of these things are a pro or a con, it's just something to be aware of before moving to Boise. Now, the last thing on the list is the size of Boise. So, Boise has grown to about 780,000 people over the last 10 years, and this growth in population has provided a lot of opportunity. So there's been a lot of business growth here, a lot of growth just across the board, creating more opportunity for jobs, for families, for cool things to just be interjected into the Boise area. Something as simple as like a Topgolf. That's not going to happen unless Boise is growing. So the size of Boise is a pro for how much it has grown and brought new opportunities into the area. But with it growing, especially how fast it grew in the Boise area, a big con of Boise is the infrastructure problem. There was so many people that moved into the Boise, Idaho area that traffic in the area has gotten horrible. Eagle Road specifically, the interstate, Shinden, the main roads that get you from Boise to a lot of the other cities like Meridian, Star, Middleton, they are extremely packed, especially at rush hour, and they get overcrowded because we haven't been able to keep up with the growth in population. Even though rush hour is of course busier, anytime you go anywhere in the Boise area, you're probably looking at about a 15-minute drive minimum, unless you're just running to the store right down the street. Anytime I go anywhere in the Boise area, I plan for at least 15-minute drive time, and that's just because it is a little bit overcrowded and that infrastructure hasn't been able to keep up. With that infrastructure and them trying to keep up, there's also a lot of construction. And a big thing that's happening right now is we're getting a lot of roundabouts. Roundabouts are being built everywhere, and those are not quick builds. So there's a lot of reroutes, a lot of detours, adding to the issue of the traffic and overcrowding. Now, even though Boise has grown, there is still opportunity for more of that small town feel. If you want more land, if you want what kind of Boise used to be, there's a lot of opportunity in the Kuna, Nampa, Caldwell, Middleton, Star, and even Emmett areas to have more of that out of the city feel if that's what you're looking for. Now, even though Boise has grown to that 780,000, it's not going to be anything compared to the traffic, the size, or the amount of people that you're going to see in LA, Portland, Seattle, Denver. It's still a smaller metro city, so that's still a plus. But if you are looking for some of that more land, you are going to want to look on the outskirts in some of those cities. Now, to wrap it all up, Boise has a lot of pros and a lot of cons. Overall, living here my entire life, if you're somebody that can handle the weather, you don't mind it being a little bit traffic busy, you're used to a little bit bigger of a city, Boise is a great place to live. When you combine the culture, the people that live here, you combine all of the things that there are to do here, it's a great mix of small town and big city living. And it's really just a great place to live. So if you guys have any questions, if I missed anything, if you want to know more about any of these things, feel free to reach out to me anytime. But I appreciate you guys listening. I look forward to meeting any of you. And if you guys want to know what Meridian, Idaho is like, the pros and cons of that, or you want to hear the pros and cons of Nampa, Idaho, or some of the other cities, I'll throw up some videos here. But thank you for listening.